This is a Teams format, so very simple. If you have any questions, just drop them in the chat as you ordinarily would. And we'll get to them sometimes in the midst of the recording, or I'm not sorry, the presentation. Sometimes we might wait till the end, just depends on the flow and how relevant the question is at the current time. Couple of notes, our speakers today, two great speakers, Pete Spackner, Regional VP, Enterprise Sales, and Phil Godfrey, Manager Solution Sales Engineering. So they're going to kind of take you through both of this whole thing together. But to kick things off, we've got a poll for you to get you engaged and find out a little bit more about the folks listening in today. And this poll is about the challenges that you're facing. So question simple: which NOC monitoring challenges is your organization experiencing today? So poll will pop up, and if you can, just answer the poll, and we'll respond to what we see there. Okay, do we have any, John? I'm not seeing the poll.
I went ahead and shared it, so we'll see if I click results. Looks like we got some results clicking in there. It's like 38% are experiencing some alert fatigues, 21% experiencing skills gaps and team bandwidth, and then tied at 12% is some off-hour support and managing tool sets.
Okay, great. So Pete and Phil, I know you're going to speak to some of the top responses.
Yeah, sure, Larry. Thanks. And thanks to everyone for joining today. So I'll cover off on alert fatigue. This is something that we hear time and time again. IT teams get so many alerts throughout the day. They typically and frequently have to ignore some because they just can't keep up. Again, we see this with our customers all the time. So some legacy tools are specifically more prone to this. As there's no AI engine built into it to help with event correlation, or the team just hasn't been able to optimize it yet. So that's a common one we see all the time.
I'll pick up on skills gaps, which obviously this is particularly common with what we might call the older technologies, such as Unix, and even VMware is coming into this category now with sort of like newer engineers looking at more interesting products as they come onto the market. It's essentially not cool to be looking at VMware anymore.
Very good. Okay, so to start, we'd like to take a look at in-house NOC operations versus outsourcing. But before we do, Phil, I thought before we get too far into this, should we make sure that we're aligned as to exactly what we're talking about here? There's a lot of different ideas as to what a NOC really is, and I'm curious before we start to get your opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's hundreds of ideas of what it is. I like some of the simple descriptions, and one of my favorites, albeit a little bit old now, is IBM's description. So that's a network operations center, or NOC, is a centralized location where computer, telecommunications, or satellite network systems are monitored and managed 24/7. And they also state that it's the first line of defense against network disruptions and failures. Now, I like that because it mentions computer and network systems. It talks about monitoring and managing. And this helps us to understand that it's not just about the switches, the routers, the firewalls, but it's the infrastructure as a whole. And it's not just the monitoring bit. It's basically everything that happens within the infrastructure.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really great point. And I agree. Very good description of NOC, what it is. And so I guess now that we're aligned on that, Larry, I was going to kick it back to you for our second poll.
Yeah, second poll, another simple question for the team. What is your long-term strategy for delivering NOC services? And you'll see there's several options.
Okay, so give everyone a moment to respond to that, and then we'll continue on. Okay. So Phil, while people continue to respond, why don't we proceed and take a look at the differences between doing it all in-house versus outsourcing your NOC?
Sure. So we've kind of organized this down into 3 different categories. We're going to look at organization size, staff skills, and the cost. But let's start with organization size. I think the biggest challenges when looking at something like this is for the SMB market or small and medium businesses. For this type of organization, we frequently see that sort of the existing IT teams, there's no definition between levels of engineers. So there's no level 1, 2, 3, etc. Because the team's essentially too small to be able to delineate responsibilities that way. More often than not, the team consists of some of the best generalists we see. And because of this, the engineers are pulled in every direction, sometimes to solve a critical issue on ERP or email systems. Sometimes it's to help with like a printer. And all too often we see things getting missed. I often use the expression firefighting when describing teams like this because these awesome engineers go from one issue or fire to another and frequently don't get a chance to do proactive work, help stop those fires from starting in the first place. Now, having said all that, because these are generalists and they're great at what they do, the issues are often assigned directly to them. They're essentially a good level 3 engineer. And instead of going through that process of being looked at an L1, they can't resolve it, escalate to an L2, can't resolve it, and eventually get to an escalation to an L3, there's often a much quicker resolution time if it goes straight to that engineer to start with.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely spoken to many engineers throughout my career who would consider themselves to be firefighters. You know, it's actually probably the majority of the customers that I've worked with. So it can be really tough for engineers to keep up with everything they have on their plate day in and day out, but also can be rewarding at the same time.
Oh, you're absolutely right about the rewarding bit. I used to be one of those engineers, what feels like 100 years ago now. I still remember the moments where we managed to resolve the major issues. I also remember the all-nighters we sometimes had to pull to try and get things up and running again. One of my favorite parts about the role was learning or playing, as I used to call it, with new technologies. The opportunities for on-the-job training was absolutely fantastic. It was things like introducing virtualization, new network, even little things like upgrading to the latest version of operating system. And I know a lot of people who stay at the same company in the same roles, instead of looking elsewhere purely because of the new toys that they get to play with. One of my least favorite parts of the role, and this all comes down to the sort of the staff skills, which I've kind of alluded to already, was the lack of cover we had within the IT department. To get 24/7 coverage, you need about 5.5 staff members to cover the 3 8-hour shifts, the weekends, the holiday, the 6 cover. And then obviously you have to multiply that by the number of technologists you want to support and the level of engineers that you need. There's a lot of companies who operate sort of like daytime rotations and maybe have an on-call system in case anything goes wrong out of hours. This works for a lot of those companies most of the time, but it can cause some major issues when it doesn't work. You hear about the horror stories of companies grinding to a halt because something happened overnight, IT only finding out about it when they get to their desks, essentially a massive queue of people wanting to report issues. Frequently, those issues could have been resolved overnight had someone been working, and now it takes 2 to 3 hours of downtime for the whole company to identify the issue and resolve it, but under a lot more pressure with people standing over their shoulders watching what they do to try and make them go faster.
Yeah, it's certainly a tough situation, and yeah, I don't envy anyone in that position. There's got to be a tremendous amount of pressure on those individuals when a critical issue arises, especially when they're the only ones that can fix it. So I think this ties nicely into our final in-house consideration. Phil, what about the cost of this model?
There's a lot of factors here which can influence the cost. If you take a look on the internet for sort of like downtime costs, you'll see numbers ranging from say $100 to $10,000 per minute of downtime. And this is obviously influenced by the size of the business, the criticality of the system. But even if you look at the $100 a minute figure, this is in the region of something like $150,000 per day that it's going to cost. But why are we talking about downtime costs when we're meant to be talking about costs of a NOC? Well, there's essentially a direct correlation between the two in many cases. Because of firefighting, there's less proactive maintenance, which in turn increases the risk of downtime. There's less specialized expertise, so potentially increasing the mean time to repair, or MTTR. We also need to take into account training when new technologies are introduced, staff turnover costs. I mentioned there's a lot of people who do a great job, who get great job satisfaction from a generalist role, but equally common are those engineers who change roles every, say, 2 to 3 years, looking for new challenges and obviously pay rises. Having said all that, of course, there are cost benefits to in-house NOCs, where maybe the most critical systems are software as a service based, essentially someone else's problem. And obviously, you don't necessarily need that 24/7 cover, or you can wait until 8 a.m. When IT turn up without much detriment to the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, all really valid points, Phil. Thank you. And so now that we've covered off on in-house considerations, let's flip over to just considerations for outsourcing your NOC.
Sounds good.
Okay. So Phil, when it comes to outsourcing your NOC, there are many key aspects that companies need to account for when considering outsourcing your network management. So again, let's look at the same 3 categories: organization size, employee skill sets, and cost.
Yeah, that's right, Pete. So one of the first things to consider is the size of the organization. The extent to which outsourced services are needed will largely depend on how big you are. For smaller organizations that are used to having a multi-skilled NOC team, where the staff often handle both end user support and critical infrastructure, outsourcing that could mean losing flexibility of having those staff resolve help desk issues immediately. Sometimes it's going to introduce a little bit of a delay. On the other hand, smaller companies might gain from an already in place governance that the outsourced NOC providers have and have applied to many different organizations already. These providers typically have well-established policies, procedures that can be applied to virtually any customer.
Got it. Okay. And next, what about staff skills?
So yeah, in-house level 1 positions are often filled by less experienced employees, possibly recent graduates who are looking to get their start in the IT world. This can sometimes lead to higher staff turnover as they move on to more specialized or higher skilled roles. With that turnover comes the need to backfill positions, train new staff. By using an outsourced provider, you remove the headache of spending time finding replacements, training them, etc. As the provider will be taking care of this with a shared resource model, and they always have someone to slot in to help out. We find that without having to worry about lower level tasks such as checking monitoring systems or basic troubleshooting, internal engineers are able to concentrate what they enjoy doing most. And that obviously leads to much higher job satisfaction. If you're running business critical systems internally and you require that 24/7 monitoring, maintaining this with an in-house team can be challenging. You obviously have to account for employee shift rotations, weekends, holidays and sick time, etc. But most NOC providers are already equipped to handle this type of availability. They typically use a follow the sun model, ensure that daytime hours are used for whichever NOC that they're using across the globe, providing consistent coverage.
Okay. Yeah, and then last but not least, how about the cost considerations for outsourced NOC?
Yeah, so long term, the costs involving NOC as a service are typically much lower compared to in-house solutions. These costs are also fixed, which is fairly important when considering operation expenditures. The outsourced model also helps protect against rising costs associated with staff turnover, internal promotions, and obviously with an in-house NOC, monitoring costs generally increase year to year because of the need to replace and train the new staff. With dedicated outsource team managing your NOC, the risk of downtime should also be minimized, which can further lower operating costs. However, obviously for this benefit to be realized, it's essential the NOC partner is appropriate and carries a high level of expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these are all critical considerations when deciding whether or not to outsource your NOC operations. So to continue on, let's discuss what companies should be looking for when it comes to evaluating a NOC service provider. So Phil, let's say I'm an IT executive at a medium, large, or even an enterprise type business. What are some of the top requirements that I should be looking for in a NOC service provider?
That's a great question, Pete. While having a provider with a proven track record and experience is important, there's obviously a number of other things which you should be looking out for. So let's start with relevant requirements. Every company and IT team is different. Their criteria for NOC as a service partner may vary as well. For instance, we've talked about the 24/7. If you're a 24/7 business, require always-on services, that provider must also have that same level of service and not just be able to be available outside regular hours on an on-call basis. So if you're having office hours plus on-call, that would mean there's not eyes on screen all of the time and can mean early warning signs for critical issues are not necessarily picked up before it's too late. If you're looking for, say, a remediation package in addition to just the base monitoring solutions, it's crucial to ensure that the provider includes those capabilities and skills in part of their service level agreements.
Definitely. And what about companies with global operations? What should they be interested in?
So global operations is quite an interesting concept because obviously you've got to partner with a NOC that operates some sort of follow the sun model or at least 24/7 model. This ensures your network operations, no matter where they are in the world, are supported. But we've also got to take into account the data localization requirements. There's a lot of regulations which are tightening year by year, making some countries mandate that no data leaves the country or continent in some cases. And if that's the case with your business, you want to partner with a NOC provider that is within your own country or continent to ensure compliance, but is also 24/7. If we move on to tool sets and adaptability, infrastructures often have unique requirements. So it's vital that whichever provider that you choose can meet those needs with the tool sets that they use. Some external providers have their own custom tool sets and the flexibility to make continuous changes, ensuring that the tools are fully compatible with your network. Others kind of use off-the-shelf tool sets, which, although are fantastic, they're market leaders, they sometimes get challenged with making those changes quite as quickly as they would like.
Okay, yeah, and is it safe to say that smaller NOC service providers may be more flexible than larger providers?
Absolutely. Obviously, the smaller, the more flexible, but sometimes you don't necessarily get that same governance. As I mentioned earlier, the larger ones sometimes rely on an off-the-shelf package, which could limit their ability to adapt to the needs of the companies that they're looking out for. And that's obviously something to keep in mind. So how about looking at the cost savings, arguably the most critical factor here? It's important to determine if outsourcing NOC responsibilities will actually save you money or not. It's not always the case. Companies should compare their current in-house costs with outsource pricing to ensure that the savings are real. Conducting due diligence is crucial to avoid any hidden costs, such as leading to sort of like the exceeding number of tickets per year that you're allowed, or maybe needing to pay for additional services that weren't necessarily included as part of the original agreement.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in summary, Phil, when considering a NOC service provider, we recommend that companies should ensure the provider meets your specific requirements. In addition, they should offer adaptable tools. And then finally, you should work to find a provider that truly will deliver those cost savings.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving forward, let's move on to another very important topic, the onboarding process for outsourced NOC services. This is a step that we take very seriously here at Park Place because, onboarding is crucial, and it lays the groundwork for a successful partnership between your IT department and the NOC service provider. So Phil, let's break this down into 3 key phases as well. How about before, during, and after onboarding?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, very important, as you quite rightly said there. So if we start with before onboarding, one of the key elements is to establish all the relevant points of contact to ensure that your right people are talking to the provider's right people. For example, there's no point in having someone from procurement who the provider has got their contact details of talking to a Unix engineer, for example. That is just not a useful use of the time there. You should also have your defined practices, policies, procedures to hand over and make sure that the provider has all the right things to follow. But you're not always going to have those to hand, and the provider should always be able to assist you in gathering all of this information if it's not readily available. You'd also need to have a look at making sure login credentials are ready. The NOC provider who's going to be monitoring your environment should only require access with the lowest privileged credentials to be able to monitor and log in there. If they're also providing a level of remediation service, they will need enhanced credentials, maybe up to an admin or root level. Another important aspect is planning for runbooks. Essentially, what needs to happen when something goes wrong. So this will include setting up alert notification management, determining who to contact, when an alert occurs, maybe different at different times of the day. So during the day, it goes to Fred blogs, and during the night, it goes to Frida blogs.
Absolutely. Yeah, defining that runbook is certainly critical. How about best practices during the onboarding process?
Yeah, so this phase involves a period of what we might call specialist care, where the engineers set up all of the outsourced services, ensure everything's functioning properly, so the monitoring, logins, etc. During this time, we're going to be doing health checks for the current state. We're going to look at long-term capacity, making sure that that's planned to make sure that there's the resource demands in future won't be straining the system. Any necessary tweaks, such as alert thresholds, can be made to ensure everything is operating smoothly. And it's also crucial to test that communication channels during this phase, ensuring that all parties are in close contact and ready to collaborate effectively.
For sure. Okay, so we've covered before onboarding, during onboarding, but what about after onboarding is complete? What happens at that point?
So we don't like to think that it just goes straight into operations. Outsourcing something like this is an ongoing process, and continuous support is essential. So it's continuous onboarding effectively. Infrastructures are dynamic, and changes within the environment will always occur. The NOC providers should be able to adapt to all of these changes, whether it's, say, optimizing the SLA for a faster response time or updating the environment as systems are added or removed. Ongoing open communications between both teams is absolutely vital. It's important to keep providing feedback in both directions to ensure the partnership remains strong and effective.
Got it. So to summarize this slide, it's important to reiterate that the onboarding process for outsourced NOC services is absolutely critical to ensure success and a smooth transition.
That's exactly right, Pete. Experience shows us that smooth onboarding leads to great long-term partnerships. But if the engagement isn't as it needs to be during the onboarding process, or information is not necessarily passed over in a timely manner, or even missed completely, there can be, say, frustrations on both sides. So shall we move ahead and discuss how Park Place can help it?
Yeah, why don't we revisit the poll? We didn't get a chance to do that before. So we asked folks about their long-term NOC strategy. And the big winner is a mix of both in-house and outsourced. If anybody cares to share, it might be interesting to understand how you're delineating what you do in-house and what you'd outsource. Beyond that, we have 17% doing it all in-house, but looking to outsource, and then 8% doing it externally, but looking to take things in-house. So thanks again for responding.
Absolutely. Yeah, good insights there, Larry. Thank you. So yeah, to move forward, I thought we could start here with an existing Park Place NOC as a service customer case study. I find it's always better to show versus tell. So in this example, we'd like to highlight how we're helping a large university in the Midwest region of the United States. And the conversation really started around Park Place's ability to replace SolarWinds with Intuity, which is our in-house network analytics software. And the university was really interested in evaluating Intuity for a lot of its robust capabilities, a few being automated network discovery, network topology, event management, to name a few. So that's really where the conversation started. But from here, we learned more about the university's in-house NOC team and how they not only had responsibility for their in-house NOC, but they also had responsibility for 24/7 WAN NOC services to support all the public schools in their state as well. So it was around this time when the university's IT organization experienced significant attrition in a very short period of time. Their network team of what was once around 12 engineers had been reduced to only 4. So due to limited staff, their NOC team just couldn't keep up with the volume and began missing SLAs. So as a result, it was no surprise that their users and customers began to complain. The remaining 4 engineers were really more of generalist or multi-skilled resources rather than subject matter experts, as you referred to earlier, Phil. So with extremely limited resources, the university just didn't have the bandwidth to keep up with 24/7 monitoring and decided to run a NOC as a service RFP to seek out alternatives.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Pete. A big challenge for them was having to manage their NOC without all the proper expertise to interpret the alerts that they were getting as much as anything. The expertise can be needed to, say, correlate hundreds of events that pop up suddenly. Network teams need to be able to pinpoint the cause of all of these alerts, and it may be just one single router that had gone down. Without the proper expertise, the university was also finding that minor faults remained undiscovered, which in turn led to a series of network outages. And this is obviously where Park Place came in.
Sure. Yeah, so to continue on, once the RFP was released, we began having conversations with the university around our NOC as a service capabilities, which of course falls under our infrastructure management pillar of services here at Park Place. So we reviewed their pain and challenges that they face with trying to keep the lights on with such a great reduction in staff. And then we held a series of discovery and solution alignment meetings to better understand their current state and then their desired state in the future. And from here, we provided, a comprehensive and customized list of services to meet their specific needs with time and resource and lack of expertise challenges in this case. And at the end of the day, happy to share that after a rigorous RFP process, the university ultimately selected Park Place as their dedicated NOC as a service provider and decided to repurpose the remaining 4 engineers to other places within the IT organization. So today we're providing 24/7 eyes on screen and monitoring for over 12,000 of their network devices delivered through our fleet of enterprise operations centers, which we will talk more about here in a bit. We're also leveraging Intuity, again, which is our own network performance monitoring tool, which provides the university with access to dashboards, reporting, and all actionable events. Finally, we also assumed responsibility for proactive management of patching and third-party call management as well. And of course, all the services we deliver are being delivered and supported through our deep bench of in-house engineers and subject matter experts. So I'll pause there. Anything I missed, Phil?
Yeah, I think it's a great success story, Pete. But I think it's important to highlight this as specific success metrics the university realized, such as reduced average response time. I think it was well over 30 minutes, and it's now under 20 minutes. Increased SLA achievement from under 80% to well over 90% now, and a significant decrease in the SEV1 events because they were able to be a lot more proactive. So that being said, let's move on to how Park Place is optimizing infrastructure management, Pete.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, at Park Place, we're laser focused on helping customers solve problems in general. When it comes to NOC services, many problems tend to be people problems, whether they're needing to fill specific skills gaps or they have limited bandwidth due to time and resource constraints. So, that's why at Park Place, we offer customizable solutions based on our customers' specific needs. And from a supported technologies perspective, for example, we can help customers with all of the top operating systems, Windows, Unix, Linux. From a hypervisor perspective, we can assist with VMware, Hyper-V. In addition to HCI or hyperconvergent infrastructure, such as Nutanix. And when it comes to storage and networking systems, we support all the tier 1 OEMs, whether it's Dell, HP, NetApp, Cisco, IBM, Arista. We support all of the biggest players out there. So at a high level, we break down our services into 3 tiers. So we have our base level, plus, and full. So to get into base level NOC as a service, we really consider this more of level 1 incident management. This is 24/7 monitoring and eyes on screen, again, delivered through our fleet of enterprise operations centers located across the world under a follow the sun model. Additional items included here are incident discovery and notification, triage and fault identification, event escalation, ticket management. We can also provide third-party call management and incident coordination. And then customers have the option within base to add remediation or patching services as well. So all in all, with the base level, we greatly reduce the noise and create tickets for only actionable events. And once again, no matter what tier of service you have with Park Place, we're going to deliver the service 7x24, 365, and provide full access to our deep bench of global engineering experts anytime throughout the day or night. And to continue, looking at plus level. So when you think about plus, this is everything included in base, in addition to remediation and patching. So instead of Park Place simply quarterbacking and passing off an action plan to your team, we'll triage, we'll escalate the problem internally amongst our team. We'll build that action plan and remediate on our customers' behalf. So for example, let's say you have a utilization issue on a server, Park Place will identify it, we'll triage it, we'll build the action plan, and we'll simply notify our customer when the resolution has been complete. Plus level also includes proactive management of patch levels, network configuration backup, as well as periodic service reviews. So plus level is much more proactive than base. From fixing and patching, Park Place will own the entire process for you. And we'll work together with your team to create that runbook that Phil talked about earlier and keep you up to date on patch requirements and compliance. And then finally, when you take it to the top level, our full level of support is really end-to-end management. This includes resolution of tickets on all entitled devices. So any service or change requests. We'll also dive deep into performance and utilization optimization and administer any problem or change requests. So with our full level offering, here you really have a Park Place team of resources to eliminate any repeat incidents. And finally, as part of full, we can also apply major version updates and help offload the entire run services to Park Place. Anything to add there, Phil?
I think you pretty much covered all of it, Pete. But I mean, one thing you mentioned before was, and I think it's worth reiterating, we've got those 3 tiers of support, which are designed to cover a lot of our customers' needs, but we also have the ability to custom package things just to make sure our customers are able to solve their problems and specific needs.
Absolutely. Yeah. good point, Phil. Okay. Now why don't we move ahead and take a high-level look at Park Place's infrastructure support and infrastructure management practice.
Yeah, so here it obviously mentions 30 years of experience, and that's through both organic growth and acquisitions. And many of our best engineers came through those acquisitions of specialist managed providers, and they've been integrated into the wider team to allow a trickle down of knowledge and expertise. We are vendor agnostic, so we've got no ties to any specific OEM, meaning we don't have our own agenda. We're not trying to push anything which is in fashion at the moment, which may or may not be the right fit for your organization. In GRC or governance, risk and compliance, security is obviously top of everyone's mind these days, especially when it's sort of like going to be global news if something goes wrong, as we saw recently with CrowdStrike and Microsoft. That affected less than 1% of Windows systems globally, but it was still headline news and caused a lot of headaches. So we operate a secure first architecture in everything we do to minimize and mitigate the chances of something like that. And of course, maintain SOC 2 Type 2 and ISO 27001 certifications, which is industry standard now. And as Pete has mentioned, we operate a follow the sun support model, which allows for that global reach, but local delivery.
Thanks, Phil. Let's continue on and take a look at what makes us different, and some key differentiators that set Park Place apart from all other NOC as a service providers. So first off, I mentioned this before, but our global fleet of enterprise operation centers, these aren't just your typical NOCs. These are what we consider to be our command centers that we built to power our infrastructure management business. These are fully staffed 24/7, 365 support facilities for our global engineering teams, who again deliver monitoring, remediation, and management of customer assets and infrastructure. In addition, we have in-region centers of excellence, which means there's specialized expertise tailored to the needs of our customers in that specific geography. And moving along to our second key differentiator, we use our own tools, which is a big one for us. So Intuity, I've mentioned a few times here. It's listed as in the leaders category on comparison sites such as G2 as one of the best in class network performance and monitoring tools. We currently monitor around 100,000 systems owned by customers today, including some of the largest global and Fortune 500 companies across the world. So we own the tool, we own the people, we own the process, which is, again, a really big differentiator for us, as we have complete control and we're not relying on anybody else. Intuity, again, provides full visibility into your infrastructure, and customers get full access to dashboards, reporting, alerts, and actionable events.
So moving on to support templates, these are another key differentiator. They're built on the 30 years, which I've already mentioned. And it means that they're tried and tested to handle all sorts of scenarios. They're designed specifically to optimize infrastructure uptime, which is obviously critical for any business. These templates can be configured to meet your specific needs, so you're not just stuck with that one size fits all. And finally, let's talk about governance. It's a standout feature here is the hypercare process. This is a period of intense focus, particularly when you first start with Park Place, just to make sure that everything runs smoothly. There's also what we call everboarding, which I think is pretty unique. It's essentially that continuous onboarding process which I mentioned earlier, meaning that we're always updating and refining the services to adapt to your changing needs. And lastly, the regular service reviews are part of the governance approach. These reviews are essentially for keeping everything on track, making sure adjustments are made, and ensuring the best possible service. So, Pete, do you want to just do a quick summary of the services that we offer to meet challenges?
Sure. So, here's a full slide of common challenges that we see every day from customers, and then how they typically fit within our standard packages. And again, to reiterate, we don't have standard packages here at Park Place. There's no one size fits all. We're going to create a customized package that works for our customer specific needs. So, for example, we hear from organizations all the time that, they're having challenges monitoring 24/7. they just don't have the resources to keep up nights and weekends or over the holiday weekends. And we frequently solve this challenges by providing monitoring for the customers 24/7, 365, which allows our customers to reprioritize their resources on more critical projects. Alert fatigue, we talked about earlier, another very common challenge. In addition, most IT departments run very lean and oftentimes are having to pull resources from business critical activities to complete mundane tasks across their network. So these are all, common challenges, again, that would fall mostly in our base level NOC support, where we're going to monitor, identify any incidents, triage, and then escalate any and all issues back to our customers' in-house team to remediate. When you look at the next set, customers looking to minimize security risk, maybe they're not able to keep up with SLA attainment, or they're looking to obtain predictability across patching. That typically falls under a plus level engagement. And then finally, companies looking for help complementing current internal skills, or companies focused on driving uptime, and those looking to avoid cost volatility associated with managing their network. They may fit into our full end-to-end management solution, where Park Place can run, operate, administer any problem or change requests, and then execute on our customer's behalf. So I'll kick it back to Larry because we have one final poll for the group.
We do. So we'll launch this poll, then we'll get into Q&A. We got a couple of questions coming in. This poll: which outsourced NOC services would be helpful to your organization? So based on what you were thinking about before this presentation, and after what you've heard, I'd be curious to know what you think would be helpful. So we'll keep that poll up, and you can answer it when you're ready. And then we'll get into some questions. And Phil and Pete, thanks. A lot of great information there. Pete, first question will be for you. Okay. Can I get a better understanding of your global coverage and then the service delivery model around that?
Sure. Yeah, great question. So, Phil mentioned this earlier, right? But we've been in business for 30 plus years. So at this point, we're supporting over 22,000 customers in over 100,000 data centers in over 180 plus countries globally. So I mentioned our enterprise operations centers. They're located here at our global headquarters in Cleveland, as well as Boston, which is also our global operations facility, Montevideo, Cork, Ireland, and then, of course, the team over in APAC as well. So, from a stocking locations and field service centers, we have over 957 globally for our hardware business. And then when it comes to size and scale of engineering, I mentioned our subject matter experts a few times. We have one of the largest engineering teams in the industry. We have over 100 level 3 and level 4 subject matter experts, close to 400 field engineers, 100 plus call center support center analysts. So, again, with all of our services, you have access to our 24/7, 365 support number, and then obviously our monitoring and web portal, automates a lot of the ticketing process and ensures that we work efficiently together amongst Park Place and our customers.
One last question for Phil. What's on your roadmap for the future?
Oh, that's a really good question. We're always looking to expand and enhance services, predominantly based on market demand. So we've recently responded to the challenges caused by the Broadcom acquisition of VMware. So that now includes some new hyper-converged solutions. More and more customers are looking at SD-WAN and replacing their traditional WAN. So again, we're responding to make sure that we cover the majority of SD-WAN solutions. And then we're getting more and more traction on mainframe solutions such as ZOS or ZOS for our EMEA friends. And that's getting more and more popular.
Excellent. Well, I don't think we have any more questions. So with that, we'll wrap things up. I think we'll put some some links in the chat if we haven't already done that, so you can get a sense of, if you want to spend more time looking at our services. And certainly if you have any questions, now put it in the chat. We'll still be able to get them after the event is over, or, visit parkplacetechnologies.com or contact a Park Place Technologies sales rep if you have one. So thanks again for attending. We really appreciate you hanging in there with us. Bye all.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.